Hello, my name is Kaylee Lively, and I'll be doing a presentation on fishing to extinction, the decline of the Pacific bluefin tuna. If current fishing rates continue, Pacific bluefin tuna face the risk of extinction. Bluefin tuna are considered to be diamonds of the sea. The Pacific bluefin tuna are powerful and majestic animals. They're built for speed and can travel up to 30 miles per hour. They can reach 10 feet in length and weigh up to 1,000 pounds. With speed and strength, they are certainly the top ocean predators, or some of the top ocean predators, and some of the most important fish in the sea. In the Pacific, scientists think that the bluefin start reproducing between the ages of 3 and 5 years old. The recent researchers suggest that some may reach maturity actually much later than that. They average 15 years, but can live for up to 26 years. The Pacific bluefin tuna hold the record for the most expensive fish. Where exactly do these fish spawn and where do they range? I created a geo-mashup map to simply show where the fish spawn and where they range. They spawn between Taiwan and the Philippines and in the Sea of Japan. They migrate over 6,000 nautical miles to the eastern Pacific, eventually returning to their birth waters to spawn. Usually the Pacific bluefin spawn between April and August, and they reach reproductive maturity around 5 years old. The Pacific bluefin tuna have been spotted from Baja California as far north as the Gulf of Alaska, though they rarely venture further northern than Oregon. In the western Pacific, bluefin tuna can be found as far north as Russia's Sakhalin Island and as far south as New Zealand. Why are Pacific bluefin in such high demand? Well, first off, they're extremely tasty. I like sushi, and I'm sure many of you do as well. So the bluefin tuna are actually some of the most delicious fish. They're desired for their rich, fatty flesh, and they're in extremely high demand, especially among sushi devotees in Asia and in higher and Western restaurants. Just a single bluefin tuna sold for $1.7 million at Tokyo's famous Suzuki Market in 2013. Too much fishing. The Pacific bluefin is seriously being overfished. They've suffered a catastrophic decline in stocks in the northern Pacific Ocean of more than 96%. Managing these species has been a case of a little too late. Though the stock has been overfished for most of the last 70 years, commercial catch in the eastern Pacific was not restricted until just 2012, and catch limits are 20% higher than the ISC scientific advice. So similarly, in the western Pacific, there were no binding catch limits until just 2013. So about 90% of the specimen currently fished are extremely young and have not had the chance to reproduce. So fewer than 40,000 adult Pacific bluefin tuna are left in the wild, and 25,000 tons of bluefin tuna are caught each year. Japan's dominance. Japan certainly dominates the sushi market, and with sushi being such a huge business in Japan, they are the world's largest importer of bluefin and consume more than 80% of the Pacific bluefin tuna. The high demand for sushi and sashimi in Asia is mainly to blame for the rapid decline of the species in recent decades. Japan has the largest fish market in the world, the Suzuki Market, which allows buyers to compete and bid on the largest bluefin tuna to be sold to the next high-end sushi restaurant. How long has this fish, the Pacific bluefin, been fished? Well, historical records indicate that coastal communities in Japan were landing bluefin as early as 3000 BC. In the mid-20th century, the Japanese purse seine and longline fleets were expanding, catching bluefin on the spawning grounds and throughout the western Pacific. Bluefin has certainly been overfished for most of the last 70 years. What methods are used to catch the bluefin tuna? They're often catched by purse seine, longline, and trolling. Purse seine is probably the most common way to catch these fish. The purse seine is a huge net which has a drawstring at the base, allowing to shape it into somewhat of a bag form to close the bottom of the net, catching thousands and thousands of fish. Long line and trolling are very similar ways to catch the bluefin, and they're basically baited lines that are different shapes and sizes dragged on the back or the sides of the boat catching fish. Tuna ranching and farming have become very popular in recent years, and the bluefin tuna are often ranched or rustled. Fishermen catch spawning schools and transfer them to 50-meter wide cages. The practice is thought to be damaging to the fish stocks because they are not able to reproduce this way. The Japanese are experimenting with raising bluefin in huge ocean enclosures. After fish reach a certain length of 1 meter and weigh 30 kilograms, then they can be sold commercially. It is very expensive to feed these growing bluefin. 1.5 tons to 2 tons of squid and mackerel are needed to produce just one 220-pound bluefin tuna. Researchers at Kinki University predict that Japan should be able to produce 100% of domestic demand for bluefin tuna with farm fish raised from eggs rather than being caught in the wild. But the verdict on this is certainly still out. Just how bad did the Pacific bluefin have it? They're not yet considered endangered. They're only considered vulnerable species at this point. Catching the juvenile bluefin is basically threatening the future of the population by significantly reducing its ability to recover and grow. A single specimen could make a catcher rich for life. And without catch limits, there really is no way to stop these fishermen from pursuing them. And why would they want to stop pursuing them when they can make such great money selling them? Until recently, there have been no catch limits or any other effective controls on the catch of the Pacific bluefin. What can be done to preserve these fish? Refrain from ordering bluefin tuna at sushi restaurants. You really will only see the Pacific bluefin or any other bluefin tuna at higher-end sushi restaurants, but I know that I will certainly think twice about ordering tuna at sushi restaurants after doing all of this research and this presentation. List Pacific bluefin tuna under the Endangered Species Act is certainly a great first step in preserving them. Catching juvenile Pacific bluefin must be reduced in order to give the species a fighting chance to reproduce. Continued efforts at Japan's Kinki University's Pacific Bluefin Aquaculture Program is extremely important, as this may be the only way to put any stock of bluefin tuna back out into the wild. Manage protection of bluefin on their spawning grounds. Neither the Pacific or any other bluefin tuna should be fished for on their spawning grounds. And continue to educate about the repercussions of overfishing the Pacific bluefin tuna. Thank you for listening, and I hope that you enjoyed the presentation, and I hope that you learned more information on why the Pacific bluefin is so important and why we should continue to preserve this species.